The title of today's lesson is Chapter 8.4 and 8.5. I'm sorry, it should be 8.5 and 8.6, factoring. Do not be intimidated by the fact that we are covering two sections in one day. As I have stated in previous videos, you already know a huge chunk of what you need to perform well in both sections. What you will notice though, and if other students that you know have this class, some teachers separate this into two sections. But I believe that they represent the same thing. I'll show you what I mean in a second. Overall, what I don't want you to do is to view these two sections differently, because the factoring process is the same for both. So let's just go ahead and get to it. I will leave a note here that says you definitely need to take notes as a cheat sheet to start your work. Afterwards, it does become more natural. But like I said, I'll tell you what things you should write on that cheat sheet to help you out. You don't need to write all the words, but like I said, I'll point out what's the important part. The first thing is that you want to be able to create the combination. The first step of factoring, again, is creating the combination. Factoring itself, I always tell people that when you get into factoring, which is why I said it's a tough process, although it's not hard, as long as you follow my directions on a daily basis, it's going to be very easy. But although it's not hard, it's just like working a puzzle, which means you have to approach it with the willingness to fight a little bit. If you don't have any fight in your system, you're not going to be able to factor at all, because you honestly have to sometimes fight for your answer and do a little bit of extra work and just not give up, which is honestly all math is trying to teach you anyway. You have to learn how to read the puzzle as well as how to start the puzzle. The step of creating the combination is simple. This you want to write: multiplies to equal a times c, adds to equal b, with the general form of the problem being ax squared plus bx plus c. So as you write that, I'll explain this. When it says it multiplies to be a times c, that means take the front number times the back number, and that's what's going to go up here, and then simply take the middle number, and that's what goes down here. And that is the easy step, a very easy step, but it's just something again that you need to write down for your notes for the cheat sheet part of it. And then after you do it a few times, you probably won't need to write it down ever again, because it's really not that hard. Now you might need to go back to it when you study for your final, but other than that, like I said, factoring is really not that hard. I think again, a lot of times students just get overwhelmed whenever the teacher gives them everything at once. The good news for you is I've been teaching you small pieces over the last 3 weeks, and I do hope that you've been doing your best to stay up to speed. In other words, the top number is found by multiplying the front and back values. The bottom number is found by using the middle value. Let's look at some examples. You might just want to write these examples for yourself and write what I'm writing. At least a couple examples, I'd say at least A and B, and that way you have something to kind of go off of. But here's what we do. We put multiplies to equal, and you simply take front number times back number. 4 times negative 6 is negative 24, and adds to equal whatever the middle number is, which is 5. That is it. That's how you create the combination. Alright, so again, when you create the combination, you simply put multiplies to equal, multiply front times back, and then it adds to equal whatever is in the middle. Here, multiplies to equal 1, remember that's a 1 times 9, which is 9, and adds to equal negative 6. That's how you create a combination. Alright, here it's going to multiply to equal negative 12, and add to equal, if there's nothing there, remember that's a positive 1. And then here it multiplies to equal negative 24, adds to equal negative 5. Now as I said, after a while you don't need to write it, but I'm writing that down so you understand that that's all you're doing. Alright, the book, so you understand why I don't teach them in separate parts, is because the book separates these two problems from these two problems, because these have a number in front and those don't have a number in front. But again, all you have to do once you recognize that it's the same thing is just remember to multiply by 1 whenever there's no number in front. This does conclude the first step. At this point, if you're still not sure, just come up and ask any questions of me so I can try to help you get back on track. Again, that is the worst thing you can do, is to move forward at this point if you don't understand it, but that's probably why I'm sitting at my desk waiting for you. The second step is finding the numbers. We have already worked on this skill. This is the question I've been adding to all your work, where you've seen things that multiply to be 86 and add to be something else, or multiply to be negative something and add to be something else. You are responsible for getting any extra assistance as you might need it here. I am not going to put it in the video because again, I already have a video on this, and it's something that you have had lots of time to practice if you've been doing your job. The rest of the notes I'm going to work through with the assumption that you understand it. So again, if you get stuck on that, get assistance soon, because I am not going to cover that in terms of how it works here, because that's a waste of 5 or 10 minutes, and you've honestly been working on this for the last 2 weeks. The next thing you want to do is create the fractions. So after you've done the first step, which is creating the combination, the second step, which is finding the numbers, we'll look at the first term of the problem and create two fractions. So again, here's all you have to do. I would write this, I would actually write both of these problems down just so you understand. Off to the side, I put multiplies to equal negative 18 adds to be 3. Remember that what we do now is we make a tree for 18, which is 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6. Again, I'm not going to slow down because you should have already kind of gotten used to this. This tells me that the signs are different. Remember, because it multiplies to be a negative, this tells me that my bigger side is positive. So I put a bunch of positives there and negatives over there, because the only way you get negative 18 is if the signs are different. The ones that make a positive 3 are negative 3 and 6. So again, that's the skill we did already. So step 1 was to make the combination, which we did. Step 2 is to find the numbers, which we just did. All you have to do now, and I'm going to do this, but you don't have to, but you ignore the squared, and you simply take this part here, and you make a fraction with both numbers. So you simply put 2x, again, not the squared, over negative 3, and you put 2x over 6. If you remember one of the skills that I gave you on your problems Monday, or up to this point, I guess it was Monday, it was reducing the fractions. So what we're going to do is reduce 2/3, which common sense says they're already reduced, but for those of you who don't know that, this tells you that it stays as 2/3. So that's fine. 2x over negative 3 is fine. Just remember to keep the negative on the bottom. But 2 over 6 I don't think is reduced, and so you end up with 1/3. But remember, we do not need a 1 by the x, so this actually turns into x over 3. Again, 1x over 3, which I don't need the 1, and so you end up with 2x over negative 3 is one fraction, and this again turned into 1/3, so you end up with 1x over 3, or just x over 3. That's all you have to do when you create the fractions. You take the first term, ignoring the squared, put it into fractions over the numbers, and then reduce both fractions as far as you can. That's it. Again, this is where the work is going to come in, but as I said, it's really not that bad because most of the hard stuff you already know. In this one, we are looking for numbers that multiply to be negative 20 and add to be negative 1. Remember, there shouldn't be any variables over here. Again, all you have to do there is make your tree for 20, 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 3 doesn't go, 4 and 5, 5 is already there. This is it. That means the signs are different. This means my bigger side is negative, and because the signs are different, those have to be positive. The numbers that make a negative 1 are 4 and negative 5. So that's steps 1 and 2. This step here, again, ignore the squared and just take that term there, whatever's in front, and so we're going to put x over 4, and we're going to put x over negative 5. Common sense says 1 over 4, which is what that is already reduced. 1 over negative 5 is already reduced. That's all you have to do. Reduce the fraction. That's all. Okay, so that would be step 3, I believe, is what I'm on right now. Don't worry about writing those because I'm going to tell you what the steps are in the end. The last thing you do is you complete the problem. Once you've created the fractions, all you need to do is write them in the proper format. So the fractions that I just got here are pretty much the answer, as you'll see, but they're not in the right format. The step that we have now is very direct, and with practice, again, it's not even going to be a thought in your mind. Let's just look at some examples to complete the process, or of the complete process, so you can see just how easy this is now that you understand all the pieces. But you have to understand the pieces, otherwise it's not easy, I understand. So here we are looking for numbers that multiply to be 30, right? 5 times 6, and add to be negative 13. Sorry, I had to pause and take a call, but from what I know, we were multiply to make 30, adds to make negative 13. We make the tree for 30, 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 4 doesn't go, 5 times 6, 6 is already there. That is our full tree there. Remember, you don't want to have a bigger number over here with a smaller number over there, so that's how it's set. This means that the signs are the same because it's a positive 30. Remember, a positive times a positive, or a negative times a negative. This tells us that our big big numbers are negative, and since they are the same, it means all of them are negative. The ones that make negative 13 would in that case be negative 10 and negative 3. So again, what we do here is we ignore the x squared to create our fraction. We put 5x over 3, negative 3, and we put 5x over negative 10. Again, if you were to try to reduce the fraction of 5x over 3, you do 5 divided by 3, math, enter. Notice I ignore the negative because the negative isn't even really a factor to me. I know it's going to be negative on the bottom, but notice that I still get 5 over 3, which means that this is already reduced. Coming over to here, 5x over 10, so just do 5 divided by 10, which I'm sure some of you already know what it is. You end up with 1/2, and so that means, remember, we don't need the 1, so we get x over, again, it's going to be a negative 2. This has been reduced. And so to finish the problem, again, this is all you have to do. You take these two numbers and you put 5x minus 3 in the first parentheses, you put x minus 2 in the second parentheses, and that is factored. Think about what you did in your last test. You took 5x times x to get 5x squared. That's what that is. You took 5x times negative 2 to get negative 10x. You took negative 3 times x to get negative 3x. Negative 10x and negative 3x make negative 13x. You took negative 3 times negative 2 to get positive 6. We just went backwards from what we'd been doing. Alright, so again, what we are doing, factoring is just the opposite of distributive property, which means we're taking this and dividing it into two pieces. And that's really all it comes down to. Alright, so again, you take the fractions that you created and you simply transfer them as they are, 5x minus 3, x minus 2, put them in a parentheses form, and you're done. Looking at the last example for the day, again, here we want numbers that multiply to equal negative 112 and add to be 6. The reason we worked on the difficult numbers is because sometimes numbers get big. I don't think I need it for 1 and 2. 1 times 112. I think we already did 112, didn't we? This is where work comes in. I don't think we did 112 on this one. I think it was on my last lesson. Anyway, 2 goes in, I think 56. I told you that 3 doesn't go because 2 plus 1 is 4. It should be divisible. 4, I think, does go. 4 goes into 11 twice. With 3 left over, 32 would be 28. 5 does not go because it should be a 5 or a 0. 6, I'm not sure, so I'll do 112 divided by 6. Nope. 112 divided by 7 is 16. So 7 gives us 16. 112 divided by 8 is 14. 112 divided by 9 doesn't go, I know that. 112 divided by 10 should not go because it has to end in a 0. And 112 divided by 11 indicates the end of it because remember, whenever your answer is smaller than whatever I typed in, that is the tree. This tells me that the bigger number should be positive, so we put pluses all the way down here. This means the sign should be different because that's the only way I get a negative, so these are all negatives. Now you're looking for the one that makes negative or makes positive 6, which means the ones that are 6 away from each other. So negative 8 and positive 14. Again, you have to master that skill on your own. That's what we've been working on so you can get to that point easier. This is honestly the hardest part of factoring. Then from there, remember, you ignore the squared, focus just on that and make two fractions. So x over negative 8, x over 14. As we said earlier, those two are already reduced, so we simply finish it off by putting x minus 8 in the first parentheses, x plus 14 in the second parentheses, and that is all. That represents all that you need to do for the factoring process. Write down the following short list, and what it will do for you is not only guide you, but it will help you identify your weakness as you use it in today's work. Again, step 1, create the combination. That's where you do the multiplies that equal something as equals something else. Find the numbers. Again, that skill we already kind of learned, but maybe that's still your weakness. After you find the numbers, you use the first term to create the fractions. After you've reduced those fractions, you complete the problem by putting them into the proper format. So please go to MathXL and begin practicing. Your test for this material is Friday, so you've got today to practice, tomorrow to practice, and again, make sure you ask as many questions as you can. Anybody who fails this test is choosing to fail the test because I am sitting here for now an hour and a half giving you plenty of time to ask whatever questions that you might have. So take care of whatever business you need to take care of so you can pass this test, and good luck.